Welcome back to Through a Glass Darkly Radio. You're watching us and listening to us on United Public Radio. Actually, you're not watching us in United Public Radio. You're actually listening. The intro music was Mark of the Doomslayer by Karl Casey at White Bat Audio. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see you all. And just going to flash a few comments and try to get started as soon as possible. Look, I don't have a lot of content today, so I'm probably going to get through what I have pretty quickly. And it's been a long day. So at 7 a.m., I had my call with patrons, 7 a.m. my time. Then I did two interviews that it was like 3 hours. And then I tried to get as much work as possible in between. Well, no, then I recorded next week's live session because I'm not going to be here. So that was another 2 hours. And then I got 2 interviews with John Brandenburg, another 2 hours. I kind of quickly went out, grabbed like a coffee, and then now I'm starting another 2 hours. So just be gentle because I barely had a chance to even walk around today. Fortunately, I did have food, so I'm pretty good. Anyway, let me just get through all these. Good to see you, Spider Bite. Good to see you, Spiritual Ascension. Miss Tammy, Sirius, Gray Owl. Yes, it's Sunday again. Every day is like Sunday. All right. Miss Tammy, shout out. Let's see. Yeah, double toil and trouble. Yep, that's a little Hamlet there, I think. Yeah. Yeah, very, very busy. But I'm the guy who's always busy but doesn't show any results. Yeah, I'm gonna need it. Okay, so few items. Again, if you think you're subscribed, just double check for me and make sure that YouTube didn't randomly unsubscribe you for whatever reason. Yeah, it's Macbeth. That's right. It wasn't Hamlet. It's Macbeth. And also, if you've been watching a lot, I'd appreciate your subscription. I've been working like a dog for 3.5 years, and I feel like I'm just a spinning flywheel that's not moving the bigger wheels. So the other caveat that I always put at the very beginning, the episode, the script, the idea is mine. The script is generated by AI. Okay. I don't write anything else aside from some descriptions and titles using AI's help. But for these, just because you heard my day, you heard like I'm just working all the time and I need content much faster than I have time if I want to sleep. So, but in the in the spirit of full disclosure, I just want to make sure I do that. So yeah, sometimes it does. So that's why this is an entertainment channel, not an educational channel. So if AI gets it wrong, so I'm not saying like this is the historical truth. It's probably going to be pretty close, but you never know. You never know. Now it does cite sources, but sometimes it has been known to make up sources. So just enjoy the ride and let's see where it's going to take us. All right. And so we begin. I'm going to speak a little slower because I don't have, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of content. Let me just get through this. Yeah, you can all correct me or correct AI more specifically. Okay, here we go. Historical analysis of witchcraft in Europe and America. And we're going to start with ancient and medieval European roots of witchcraft. Belief in witchcraft has deep roots, extending back to ancient pagan religions and folklore well before the Christian era. In classical literature, for example, Circe in Homer's Odyssey which was circa 800 BC, is portrayed as a witch who could transform men into animals. The Bible, too, contains early references. The witch of Endor in the book of Samuel summons a dead prophet's spirit, and a famous biblical injunction warns, "Thou shalt not suffer a witch to live." Across the ancient Mediterranean world, magic and sorcery were part of spiritual life. Egypt's goddess Isis was revered for magical knowledge, and the Greek goddess Hecate was associated with witchcraft, the moon, and necromancy. Such figures illustrate that the concept of using supernatural means for good or ill was firmly embedded in pre-Christian traditions. In early medieval Europe, folk beliefs in magic persisted through local customs and pagan traditions. Peasant communities often had wise women, healers, or cunning folk who practiced folk magic and medicine. These practitioners might perform benign charms or remedies, but in the eyes of later Christian authorities, they blurred into the idea of the witch. Medieval folklore brimmed with tales of night-flying crones, malevolent spellcasters, and otherworldly beings. For instance, Alpine folk legend spoke of Perchta, an old winter hag who punished the wicked, a figure some scholars see as a precursor to the stereotypical witch. Such legends, along with superstitions about elves, fairies, and the restless dead, formed an underground reservoir of belief that the church would eventually draw upon in defining witchcraft. Christian doctrine in the early Middle Ages was ambivalent about witchcraft. For centuries, church authorities officially denied that witches had real supernatural powers, dismissing such beliefs as pagan superstition. An influential church text, the Canon Episcopi, circa 10th century, warned clergy that what common folk took to be witches' nocturnal flights were illusions of the devil, not actual occurrences. In practice, some folk magic practices were tolerated or quietly folded into local Christian customs during the early medieval period. However, as church theology evolved, attitudes hardened. By the 13th century, scholastic theologians like Thomas Aquinas had articulated the possibility of humans making pacts with demonic forces. Heretical movements and occult practices came under greater scrutiny. The medieval church began reinterpreting folk beliefs through a religious lens. Magic that had once been merely superstition was increasingly seen as demonic. This shift laid the groundwork for defining witchcraft as a form of heresy in later centuries. Then we get to witch hunts and trials in Europe. In the late medieval and early modern period, these evolving beliefs erupted into the witch hunts, a tragic persecution frenzy that swept Europe. From about 1400 to 1700, tens of thousands of people, some estimates range from 40,000 to as high as 80,000, were tried and executed. 80,000 people as witches across Europe. The witch hunt era reached its peak intensity between the mid-16th and mid-17th centuries, a time of great social and religious upheaval. Indeed, the most intense hunting occurred from roughly 1560 to 1630 amid the Protestant Reformation, Counter-Reformation, and brutal wars of religion. In this turbulent context, suspicion of witchcraft became a convenient outlet for fear and scapegoating. Failed crops, plagues, or calamities that people struggled to explain all could be blamed on the secretive malice of witches in league with the devil. Authorities, both secular and religious, fueled the panic. In 1486, two Dominican inquisitors published the infamous Malleus Maleficarum, Hammer of the Witches, a demonological manual that elevated witch persecution to urgent status. This book defined witchcraft as a diabolic conspiracy and instructed magistrates on how to identify, interrogate, and convict witches. The Malleus, endorsed by a papal bull, spread rapidly. For a century, it was the second best-selling book in Europe after the Bible. For 100 years, for a century, and served as a handbook for witch hunters. Both Catholic inquisitors and Protestant judges drew on such ideas. Despite their theological differences, they shared a belief that stamping out witches was necessary to defend Christendom. Inquisitorial courts, especially in parts of Spain, Italy, and France, and secular courts in Germany, Switzerland, Scotland, and elsewhere, began ferreting out alleged witches with alarming zeal. The scale and brutality of the European witch trials were unprecedented. Scholars estimate roughly 100,000 witchcraft prosecutions took place in Europe and its American colonies, with about 40 to 60,000 executions. The vast, see, there's a little bit, a few paragraphs above, it said 80,000. Not consistent. The vast majority in Europe. Execution methods were often gruesome. Many convicted witches were burned at the stake, a common punishment for heresy in places like Germany and France, while in England and its colonies, hanging was prevalent. Okay, so you get hanged in the colonies and you get burned at the stake in Europe. I think hanging I would prefer, but to each his own. While in England and its colonies, hanging was prevalent, as I said. Certain regions saw mass witch panics. In German lands, large witch purges in the late 1500s, such as in Trier and Würzburg, could send hundreds to their death in a year. By contrast, some areas were relatively spared. Ireland, for example, had very few executions. Overall, German-speaking Europe suffered the highest toll of killings, while more skeptical realms, like England and Scandinavia, which required stricter evidence, had lower execution rates. Notably, the witch hunts were highly gendered. Approximately 75 to 80% of those executed were women, typically those who did not fit the traditional social norms. Elderly widows, spinsters, midwives, herbal healers, or outspoken independent women were especially vulnerable. In the misogynistic logic of the time, women were thought to be more susceptible to the devil's temptations. The Malleus Maleficarum explicitly argued that women's carnal lust and weaker nature made them likelier to become witches. Many accused witches indeed were poor or marginalized women who had scant ability to defend themselves. Men were not entirely exempt, though. Some men, especially cunning folk or relatives of accused women, were prosecuted, and in a few regions like Iceland, a majority of accused were male, but overall the European witch craze amounted to a gender-specific persecution of women. These trials also often fed on personal vendettas and local feuds. A neighbor's accusation might stem from a grudge, with folklore and fear doing the rest. The socio-political dynamics underlying the witch hunts were complex. Historians observe that witch panics tended to flare up in times of crisis and dislocation. For example, during periods of war, famine, economic hardship, or plague, communities were eager to find scapegoats for misfortune. The late 16th century, often called the Little Ice Age, brought bad weather and poor harvests, fueling desperation and witch accusations. Witch trials also enforced social norms. Accusations often targeted those who deviated from expected roles. A quarrelsome beggar, woman, or a midwife whose patients died in childbirth, for instance. In a patriarchal society, the witch figure became a vessel for anxieties about assertive women and folk healers. Religious fragmentation also played a role. Witch hunting was fed by the fanatical zeal of both Counter-Reformation Catholics and Calvinist or Lutheran authorities, each eager to prove their godliness by rooting out the devil's servants. In sum, Europe's witch hunts were driven by a volatile mixture of fear, folklore, misogyny, and power struggles. By the late 17th and early 18th century, the craze subsided. Skepticism from the Enlightenment and the devastation the witch hunts had caused led to reform. But the legacy of the burning times, as modern witches call it, casts a long shadow over Western history. Now, moving on to witchcraft in colonial America in the 17th century. Belief in witchcraft crossed the Atlantic with European settlers, leading to America's own witch trials, albeit on a smaller scale. In the New England colonies, deeply religious Puritan communities were predisposed to see the devil's hand in everyday misfortunes, much like their European counterparts. Colonial leaders held that Satan was actively trying to undermine their godly New Jerusalem in the New World. Puritan theology taught that witches in league with Satan could infiltrate the community, and this fear was exacerbated by the harsh realities of colonial life. In the late 17th century, New England was reeling from wars with Native American tribes, outbreaks of smallpox, and political turmoil under the new Massachusetts Charter. This anxiety created a tinderbox environment ripe for witch hunt hysteria. The most notorious episode was the Salem witch trials of 1692 in Massachusetts. It began in the village of Salem when several young girls, notably 9-year-old Betty Paris and 11-year-old Abigail Williams, inexplicably fell into fits and hysterical episodes. Their alarming symptoms, contortions, screaming, and complaints of being bitten or pinched by invisible specters sparked a frenzy. Unable to find a medical explanation, modern scholars later speculated about causes like ergot fungus poisoning. The community feared the devil was at work. Pressured for answers, the afflicted girls named several local women as the sources of their torment. In February 1692, Tituba, an enslaved Caribbean woman in the Paris household, was accused alongside 2 other women, Sarah Good and Sarah Osborne. Under duress, Tituba confessed to practicing witchcraft and fantastically claimed there was a coven of witches conspiring in Massachusetts. Her confession, a mix of folklore and what her interrogators wished to hear, poured fuel on the fire, seemingly confirming that Satan's agents were in their midst. What followed was a spiraling series of accusations, trials, and executions that lasted into 1693. Over the course of the Salem Panic, around 150 people were accused of witchcraft. Many confessed falsely to save themselves, often implying or implicating others. In the end, the courts executed roughly 20 people for witchcraft in Salem. 14 women and 6 men were put to death, 19 by hanging, and 1 man pressed to death by heavy stones for refusing to plead. Dozens more languished in jail, and at least 5 of the accused died in prison. Those executed included pillars of the community and social outcasts alike, from tavern owner Bridget Bishop, the first hanged, to Reverend George Burroughs, a former minister, and Martha Corey, a farmer's wife who scoffed at the trials and thus fell under suspicion. The gender dynamics of Salem mirrored the European pattern. The majority of those accused and executed were women. But notably, Salem's victims also included men, showing that even male colonists, especially those who defended accused women or otherwise drew suspicion, could fall prey to the hysteria. Several factors set the American witch trials apart from European ones. For one, colonial witch hunts were far smaller in scale. Historians count perhaps 35 executions in all of New England during the 17th century, a tiny fraction compared to the thousands in Europe. The Salem Panic of 1692 was by far the deadliest outbreak in the colonies, It was the largest and most lethal outbreak of witchcraft hysteria in American history, as one account notes. By contrast, earlier witch trials in the colonies were sporadic. The first recorded execution for witchcraft in America was in 1647 in Connecticut, a woman named Alice Young. Connecticut saw a few dozen accusations over the years, 46 accused between 1647 and 1697, resulting in 11 executions. But by the late 1690s, even Connecticut's zeal had faded. Other colonies were even more restrained. In Virginia, witchcraft was acknowledged as a concern, but the approach was comparatively skeptical. Virginia held about 24 witch trials from 1626 to 1730, mostly investigating isolated accusations, and no one was executed in those cases. In fact, as early as 1655, Virginia passed a law making it a crime to falsely accuse someone of witchcraft, reflecting a legal commitment to preventing the excesses seen elsewhere. Such a law was virtually unheard of in 17th century Europe. This regional contrast in attitudes, the fervent Puritan Northeast or Puritan New England versus the more Anglican rationalist Virginia, highlights that the social and religious climate greatly shaped colonial responses to witchcraft. The Salem trials came to an end when the colony's leaders began to doubt the veracity of spectral evidence and realized the mass injustice that was unfolding. In October 1692, the governor of Massachusetts dissolved the special witch court, and by May 1693, the remaining prisoners were pardoned. In the aftermath, there was a collective rethinking. Judges and juries admitted regret, and influential voices like Puritan minister Increase Mather argued it was better that 10 suspected witches go free than one innocent person be condemned. Over time, the colonial legal system moved away from witch trials entirely. No executions occurred in America after 1692 for witchcraft. The memory of Salem, however, loomed large as a cautionary tale against moral panics and injustice. In the centuries that followed, the descendants of those involved sought to make amends. The state of Massachusetts formally apologized for the Salem persecutions as early as 1711. Some restitution was paid to survivors, and in 2001, wow, that's pretty late, the state legislature officially exonerated the last of the convicted Salem witches and issued a public apology. Even in the 2020s, efforts continued to clear remaining historical accusations. For example, Connecticut only recently considered exonerating those it hanged for witchcraft. The colonial American experience with witch hunting, while brief, left an enduring imprint on American culture, from literature and popular imagination. For instance, Arthur Miller's play The Crucible uses Salem as an allegory, to a lingering awareness about the dangers of religious extremism and false accusations. Occult revival and modern witchcraft in the 20th century. After the witch trials died out in the 18th century, belief in witchcraft did not disappear so much as transform. During the Age of Enlightenment, educated opinion came to dismiss witch hunting as superstition. Laws against witchcraft were repealed or fell into disuse across Europe. For instance, English Witchcraft Act of 1735 outlawed accusing someone of witchcraft, and even that was finally repealed in 1951. The image of the witch survived in folklore and fairy tales, but for a longer period, witchcraft as a practice went underground. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, however, a resurgence of interest in the occult emerged in Europe and North America. Romantic and Victorian-era scholars collected folk stories of witchcraft and occultist movements, from spiritualism's seances to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, explored magic and ancient paganism. Some intellectuals theorized that the persecuted witches of the past had actually been practitioners of an old pagan religion. The idea, known as the witch cult hypothesis, was famously proposed by anthropologist Margaret Murray in 1921, though her theories are now largely discredited. Nonetheless, by the mid-20th century, these currents set the stage for a revival of witchcraft as a modern spirituality. A pivotal turning point was the birth of Wicca in the late 1940s and 1950s. Wicca is a modern pagan religion centered on witchcraft practices founded by Englishman Gerald Gardner and his collaborators in Britain. Gardner claimed to have encountered a surviving coven of witches in England who preserved pre-Christian pagan traditions. In 1954, he published Witchcraft Today, announcing the existence of this nature-focused witch religion. While the authenticity of Gardner's story is debated, there's no doubt he sparked the revival of witchcraft as a self-conscious religion. Wicca worships a goddess and a god, often viewed as Mother Earth goddess and a horned god, celebrates seasonal festivals, and practices ritual magic. Unlike the satanic evil witchcraft of old witch hunters' imaginations, Wiccans emphasize positive ethics encapsulated by the Wiccan Rede. And it harm none, do what ye will. A principle of avoiding harm. Wicca also incorporates a Book of Shadows, which is a compendium of spells, rituals, and wisdom that practitioners use as a guide. By the 1960s, Wicca had spread from the UK to the United States and beyond, carried in part by individuals like Raymond Buckland, a student of Gardner who introduced Gardnerian Wicca to America in 1964. The mid-20th century also saw a broader occult and neo-pagan revival. The repeal of the last anti-witchcraft laws in 1951 Britain meant witches could practice more openly. Across Europe and North America, various neo-pagan movements sprang up, reconstituting ancient polytheistic traditions, Norse, Celtic, Greco-Roman, etc., or inventing new syncretic ones. Modern witchcraft often overlapped with the counterculture of the 1960s and 70s, with its interest in nature, Eastern religions, and alternative spirituality. Notably, the feminist movement found powerful symbolism in the figure of the witch. In the 1970s, women's spirituality groups embraced witchcraft as a means of empowerment and reclaiming the suppressed divine feminine. For example, in 1971, Susanna Budapest, a Hungarian-American feminist, founded Dianic Wicca, a women-only tradition of witchcraft that worshipped the goddess and explicitly fused witchcraft with feminist politics. Dianic covens, often lesbian or women-centric, sprang up, emphasizing healing, sisterhood, and feminine power, while largely omitting the god figure of more traditional Wicca. Around the same time, feminist writers began reinterpreting the witch as a symbol of the persecuted wise woman and a rebel against patriarchy. Another influential voice was Starhawk, or otherwise known as Miriam Simos, an American activist who, in 1979, published The Spiral Dance, a groundbreaking book that combined witchcraft, ecology, and feminist social justice. Starhawk helped found the reclaiming tradition, blending Wiccan ritual with political activism, especially environmental and anti-war causes. She and others portrayed witchcraft as a path of personal and societal transformation, coining the notion that witches were those who tap into ancient earth-centered wisdom to heal communities and fight oppression. The rise of such feminist witchcraft marked a transformation. The witch, once a feared creature of nightmares, was recast as a positive archetype, a healer, protector, an empowered woman in tune with nature. This reimagining is sometimes summed up by a popular slogan seen on 20th century protest signs. We are the granddaughters of the witches you failed to burn. By the late 20th century, modern witchcraft and Wicca had gained significant traction. Dozens of traditions and sects proliferated. So Gardnerian, Alexandrian, Dianic, Fairy, Celtic, Reconstructionist, etc., each with its own spin on ritual and theology. Organizations and covens were founded. For instance, the Covenant of the Goddess, a national Wiccan confederation, was established in 1975 in the U.S. to advocate for Wiccans' religious rights. The number of self-identified witches climbed rapidly. Surveys in the United States began to register Wicca as a growing religion. From essentially zero in the 1950s, the population of Wiccans, neo-pagans was estimated in the hundreds of thousands by the year 2000 and over 1 million in the 2010s, according to some studies. With growth came official recognition. Courts and governments gradually acknowledged Wicca as a legitimate faith. A landmark moment came in 1986 when a U.S. federal court, Detmer versus Landon, ruled that Wicca is a bona fide religion protected by the First Amendment. Similarly, Wiccan churches obtained legal status. Wiccan prison chaplains and military chaplains were accepted. And in 2007, the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs approved the pentacle, which is a 5-pointed star, as an emblem on veterans' tombstones. In Canada and the UK, Wicca and paganism also came to be openly practiced. In 2004, the first Wiccan wedding was legally recognized in Scotland. This legal and social acceptance marks a sea change from earlier centuries. Openly declaring oneself a witch went from a death sentence in 1690 to a protected right by 1990. Of course, not everyone welcomed the occult revival. In the late 20th century, pockets of conservative backlash occurred. Most infamously, the Satanic Panic of the 1990s. I remember that, when unfounded fears of satanic ritual abuse spread in America. Modern witches, however, were not actually Satan worshippers at all, and many worked hard to distinguish their nature-oriented practices from sinister black magic. Despite occasional stigma, by the turn of the 21st century, the image of the witch had largely been rehabilitated in the West. Witches were now frequently seen as New Age healers, feminist icons, and participants in a recognized neo-pagan religious movement, rather than as agents of evil. All right, let's take a brief pause here. I'm just going to go through some of the comments, and then believe me, I'm like, just to give you a sense of where I am 75% through this manuscript. And as you can see, I'm only a little bit more than 25% through this broadcast. So we got time. We got plenty of time. Now I just have to figure out where I left off in the comments. There are a lot of comments. There we go. All right. Oracle of Relfi, welcome. Good to see you. I'm just going through rapidly, but I got to keep talking because there are people on the radio who do not see this. All right, so John Kurtz writes, being accused of heresy was almost always a death sentence. Very true. Oracle of Relphi says I was Mary, Queen of Scots, in a past life. Yeah, just don't say Bloody Mary in the mirror. What? Creeps me. Spiritual Ascension is just saying scumbags. I'm assuming she's talking about the Inquisitors and whatnot. Oh, yeah, she says yes, the Spanish Inquisition. By the way, there was so much. Well, let me step back. Because of all these prosecutions, when you look at genetic markers for psychic ability, at least Dr. Dean Radin did, the place where there's the least psychic ability, it's in Central Europe. And that's because they murdered some of these witches presumably, or accused witches presumably had, maybe had psychic ability or something like that freaked their neighbors out, that caused them to be accused of witchcraft. Again, I'm not sure if that's the case, but that's kind of the contention. Yeah, Oracle over. Yeah. Germans kill? No. Yeah. John Kurtz writes, the Vatican reigns supreme. They did indeed. Scott Ian, in a complete non sequitur, says goth chicks. So I guess witches are goth chicks. But Oracle agrees that comment's right on target. Maybe. I don't know if she agreed with that comment, but somebody's comment. John, yeah, so Spiritual Ascension says John Kurtz, their time is coming, i.e. goth chicks. Spiderbite asks, have you got information on the witch trees they built the buildings around? No, I didn't read about anything like that, but I don't think it's in the rest of the script. There's not much left in the script. AC and Blur. She says hi, hey chat. Greyhow writes, and in contemporary times, one is more likely first hung from the gallows of the shadow ban upon first offense, or debanked, which is effectively equivalent to being driven out of your Greek city-state into the barbarous regions where you were very likely to die. That's all right. You can watch from here forward, and you did miss about 75% of the content of the serious content. But I'll get back to I still have another 25%, but I'm going to run out of it quick. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, they're good people. There's good people in the chat. So, I don't know why it developed that way. Well, it probably developed that way because if in like regular comments, if someone just comes in and just said, "There's too many commercials," and why am I seeing so many commercials? It's like I just send them into the void because I really don't give a crap if you think there's too many commercials. I'm not doing this for I'm not making this for people's edification. I'm doing it because I like to do it and because it takes a lot of work. So when I hear comments like that, or the host talks too much, the host needs to stop talking, you're gone. So anyway, that's probably why. That's part of the reason is that. Oh, the other reason is only subscribers can chat. So if you're not a subscriber, you can't. You can read the chats, but you can't contribute to the chats. And I do that. That also helps mitigate people who come in and flybys that just take a dump on the chat. So if you're listening to this and you really want to speak, subscribe please, and then you can. It's instant. You don't have to wait a minute. There are settings where I can have you make you wait 5 minutes after you subscribe and all that stuff. You subscribe and you can immediately comment. But that's probably why everybody's friendly. So Spiritual Ascension says even ratted out their own sisters so they could save themselves at the expose of another. And then Spiderbite writes, then they built asylums for women. Oracle of Relphi says, I'm from Massachusetts originally. My wife is from Massachusetts as well. Okay, so CN Bloor is writing, I feel that witchcraft is making a big comeback here in the UK. That's probably. Spiritual Ascension's getting all fired up. Hypocrites. Hypocrites! Sirius says, plausible. Sirius is saying this stuff is all so bad. Well, yeah, humans are brutal people. I mean, or there's brutal. Oracle of Relphi, I guess, is referring to the Salem witch trials, ergot poisoning. Spiritual Ascension is saying it's serious. We are back and we mean business. Cian Bloor is writing, they start off by sucking people in with natural medicines. Okay, so Spiritual Ascension writes, I wonder why they were so adamant at wiping out powerful women. So J. Paul saying they were eating moldy bread and ingesting ergot, tripping balls. They were. Yeah, at least that's a theory. John Kurtz says hocus pocus. Spiritual Ascension, bippity boppity boo. Spiderbite is writing, I wonder if it is classed as a mimetic virus. Who knows? Oracle of Relphi says ergot causes abortion and psychosis. I can imagine. Grey Owl writes, the witches of current day, like the witches of earlier versions of the Matrix, if you will, are identified as cover for the misdeeds of those behind the curtain of Oz, in his humble opinion. Spiritual Ascension writes, the eradication of witches was all orchestrated by the dark side, trying to expel their adversaries. J. Paul writes, entirety of human history is mimetic. Oracle of Relphi says the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Spiritual Ascension writes, Darwinism is way off the truth of human history. Spiritual Ascension writes, we are the granddaughters and grandsons of the witches they couldn't burn. John Kurtz writes, Washington Irving. Since Sleepy Hollow. Grey Owl writes, one might say we are anomalies in the code. Spiritual Ascension says we are the most high warriors. Sirius writes, this is where it goes all wrong. Nothing ended. Spiritual Ascension says, yes, white and organic all the way. Spiritual Ascension writes, we are agents of the light. Today's debunko types likely consider psionic assets as witches. Yeah, maybe. Okay, so Soulite US Expat says, thank goodness Chat GPT-5 is coming out probably this week. So I'd be interested in seeing how much better these types of shows will get. Yeah, I'm like a guinea pig here. Soulite US Expat writes, have you seen the old videos on YouTube from like 2006 in Monterrey, Mexico? The flying witch is caught on tape. The footage isn't good, but there's some newer footage, but not sure if it's legit. I don't know about that. Soulite US Expat again writes, the flying witches in Mexico were witnessed by some police officer in Mexico who was interviewed, and you can find it on YouTube. Thank you, Spiritual Ascension. Spiritual Ascension says, we appreciate you, Sean. Spiderbite says, I think there might be people in Russia who can fly. And then Fred writes, great strategy, Sean. Never let followers control your content. Yeah, they're not doing any of the work, right? There were not even followers, but just people coming in with drive-bys where they just take a dump on the channel as they fly by, right? I don't I don't they can watch all they want, but they're just not, when they comment, nobody sees it. Gray Owl writes, Sean, I love how you took that comment of everybody being friendly in chat to a fabulously dark place and then brought it back into your summation of yes, very friendly chat. Well, I was just explaining there are structural reasons why, that was my hypothesis. My hypothesis is there are some, there's a mix of structural reasons why that's the case, but also, good people attract good people. Oh yeah, don't. So Sirius writes, "Don't stoke the fire. Love is the law." Yeah, that's a Crowley quote. Mark Morris says, "You shall not suffer a witch to live." Yeah, that was one of the quotes there. Yeah, Solite US expat. You know what? That's a good point. Let me just throw that down there. Oops, what the heck? There we go. I'll just throw that down there to make it so I don't have to say anything. But yeah, Solite US expat writes, everyone hit that like button. It helps the algorithm. Yeah, seriously. Even if you hit dislike, just I hear other YouTube creators talking about some algorithmic changes or something like that, where I don't know. I don't know if this is true, but you just don't get paid if people don't aren't engaged. It's like it's a YouTube grab, like advertising grab. Thank you, Gray Hal. I love you, brah. So spiritual ascension says smart move. Only subscribers can engage with the chat. Yeah, you guys are helping out with the channel. I'm not just going to let some rando come in and because if someone is not a subscriber, they're not likely to say anything positive, right? So it's kind of like a minimum bar. Now, if somebody's particularly determined and dislikes me, they could subscribe and then unsubscribe right after they make a comment. All right. All right. Let me just tag this one and then let's go back to the script and kind of tie it out. I mean, we're not even through an hour yet. Hold on. Let's look into Randonautica one night. What is that? Spider bite. Well, you can answer it while I'm going back to the script. All right. Witchcraft in the modern era, 21st century and popular culture. Contemporary witchcraft in Europe and America is a diverse and thriving phenomenon. No longer lurking on the fringes, witches today organize in churches, covens, and online communities, enjoying a measure of mainstream respect. Modern witchcraft takes many forms. Some practice Wicca as a formal religion, others are solitary eclectic witches casting spells at home, and others blend witchcraft with Afro-Caribbean traditions, local folk magic, or Eastern spirituality. A unifying thread is an emphasis on personal spirituality, connection to nature, and self-empowerment. Far from fearing witches, many people now seek them out for healing, tarot readings, herbal knowledge, or simply community. In 2016, the pagan population in the UK had grown enough that the University of Edinburgh even appointed its first pagan chaplain. And in the United States, recent polls indicate that hundreds of thousands of people openly identify as Wiccan or pagan, with interest especially rising among younger generations. One striking development of the 21st century is the role of the internet in uniting witches. In the words of Starhawk, the web became our church. Online anonymity allowed practitioners to connect and share wisdom without fear of stigma. As early as the 1990s, message boards and websites like the famous Witchvox forums enabled a global network of witches to form. In recent years, social media has supercharged this connectivity. On platforms like Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok, a vibrant witchcraft hashtag culture has emerged. For example, by 2020, TikTok's Witch Talk community exploded in popularity. The hashtag #PoundWitch amassed over 585 million views, with related tags like Baby Witch for newcomers and Witches of TikTok drawing tens of millions more. Through short videos, modern witches share spell tutorials, crystal and herb lore, tarot readings, and experiences of their spiritual practice. The tone in these online spaces is often educational and supportive, helping dispel old misconceptions. The internet has also broadened representation in witchcraft. Witches of color, LGBTQ+ witches, and others who once felt isolated can now find inclusive communities online. In these virtual covens, the archetype of the witch is being continually reinvented. Not just whimsical white women with pointy hats, but people of all backgrounds embracing the craft. This democratization and visibility of witchcraft via the internet is a hallmark of the modern era. Okay, bear with me for a moment. Okay. Legally and socially, practicing witchcraft is now largely protected in Western countries. Witchcraft itself has no criminal status as it once did in Europe or North America. On the contrary, many witches use existing religious freedom laws to ensure their rights. Wicca, for instance, is recognized as a religion by governments and military institutions. In the United States, Wiccans can serve as chaplains, have their holidays respected in prisons and schools, and receive the same tax status as other religious groups. Courts have consistently upheld Wiccans' rights, echoing the 1986 Detmer versus Landon ruling that Wicca is unequivocally a religion under U.S. law. Likewise, in Canada and much of Europe, neo-pagan groups are part of the religious landscape. In some European nations, like Sweden and Norway, registered pagan associations work to preserve Old Norse traditions. Modern witches also engage civically, organizing pagan pride parades, interfaith dialogues, and charitable works, further eroding the old stigma. It can be truly said that the witch has been legally exonerated in the modern West. The transformation of witches in popular culture has both reflected and propelled these changes. Throughout the 20th century and into the 21st, witches have been a staple of literature, film, and television, evolving from wicked crones to often sympathetic, even heroic characters. Early pop culture depictions still leaned into the scary stereotype. For example, the green-skinned wicked witch in The Wizard of Oz in 1939. But by the 1960s, shows like Bewitched charmed audiences with a friendly suburban witch. The late 1990s saw an unprecedented wave of witchcraft-themed entertainment. The 1996 film The Craft centered on teenage witches. 1996 also brought Sabrina the Teenage Witch to TV, followed by the character Willow practicing Wicca on Buffy the Vampire Slayer in 1997. The series Charmed, 1998, about sister witches, and the novel series Harry Potter from 1997 onward, featuring young witches and wizards as heroes. While often fantastical, these depictions introduce mass audiences to the idea of witchcraft as something other than a moral evil. In many cases, they even incorporated elements from real witchcraft traditions. For example, the use of Wiccan concepts in Buffy and the explicit identification of characters as Wiccans. By the 2000s and 2010s, witches had fully enchanted pop culture. From the dark, stylish witches of American Horror Story, Coven in 2013, to the empowered trio in the remake of Charmed in 2018, and the resurgence of Sabrina in a darker Netflix series. This mainstreaming of the witch has had a feedback effect. Many young people drawn in by pop culture went on to explore actual witchcraft and pagan religion. Authors of books on Wicca often noted that a spike in teen interest followed these shows, spawning a teen witch movement in the early 2000s. In essence, where once witch was solely a term of fear or accusation, it is now often a badge of identity, proudly adopted by practitioners and even used in marketing. Consider the plethora of witch-themed books, crystals, cosmetics, and merchandise. In the present day, witchcraft in Europe and America stands at an interesting juncture. It is at once spiritually sincere and culturally trendy. Many serious practitioners emphasize that witchcraft is a true spiritual path, involving study, rituals, ethical living, and often worship of pre-Christian deities or nature spirits. At the same time, elements of witchy aesthetics and practice have been embraced by the mainstream. Interest in astrology, tarot, herbalism, and crystals has surged among the general public, blurring the line between alternative spirituality and pop culture fad. Social scientists suggest that in an era of uncertainty and climate anxiety, people, especially the young, are seeking comfort and empowerment in witchcraft and related practices. The witch, with her blend of mystique and mastery over nature, offers a potent symbol of taking control in a chaotic world. Modern witches often frame their craft in terms of personal growth, healing, and social justice, a far cry from the antisocial malice once attributed to witches of old. As one modern witch explained, being a witch today can mean harnessing energy and using our bodies to make the world better, aligning magic with activism and self-care. It's important to note that witchcraft's stigma has not vanished everywhere. In various parts of the world, in rural Africa, South Asia, Papua New Guinea, in immigrant communities in the West, deadly witch hunts still occur to this day. Tragically, the same pattern of accusation and mob violence that haunted Europe centuries ago continues to claim lives elsewhere, often targeting vulnerable women and the elderly. The United Nations in 2021 even passed a resolution condemning harmful practices related to witchcraft accusations. These modern witch hunts remind us that the word witch still carries fear in some cultural contexts. However, in Europe and North America, the journey of the witch has largely come full circle, from feared outcast to celebrated spiritual figure. In conclusion, the history of witchcraft in Europe and America is a tale of dramatic transformation. It began in ancient times with pagan sorceresses and wise folk, was recast through medieval Christian demonology into the nightmare of the witch trials, and eventually morphed into a modern spiritual movement centered on healing, nature, and equality. The witch hunts of the 15th to 17th century stand as sobering episodes of mass hysteria and injustice, often fueled by misogyny and social tensions. Yet out of those burning times has emerged a reinvented witchcraft that people now openly practice by choice. Contemporary witches honor the folkloric past, celebrating old festivals like Samhain and Yule, even as they leverage technology and progressive values to shape witchcraft's future. From the cauldrons of medieval fear to the hashtagged realms of Instagram and TikTok, Witchcraft has proven remarkably resilient and adaptable. In the modern Western imagination, the witch is no longer a Halloween character or a heretic to be feared, but can be a neighbor, a friend, a teacher, or oneself. Witchcraft today is understood as a genuine spiritual path and cultural force, one that continues to evolve while reminding us of the rich, complex history we inherit. So, just a comment on sources, just so you know. The sources used in this script were historical records and scholarly analyses. Key references include Diane Purkis's research on English witch beliefs, statistics from historical encyclopedias, witch trial case studies, so for instance, Salem primary documents, and modern Wiccan histories. Contemporary observations draw on sociological studies of neo-paganism and media reports on the witchcraft renaissance in today's culture. These sources cited throughout provide a factual basis for understanding the evolution of witchcraft from antiquity to the internet age. And that is a wrap. That is all she wrote. And now I am utterly and completely out of material, except for the comments. So let's go back to the comments and see how everybody's doing. And then we can kind of figure out what people want me to talk about for the next hour. Oops, I think I went back too far. I did go back too far. Oh, wow. So Mark Moore is writing the John Todd tapes on YouTube will blow your mind. Witch from a bloodline. Ooh. Okay, so Spiderbite writes, the witch trees can't be cut down or burned. They regrow. They build a museum over one, a government building, like in Washington, over another. And Spiderbite continues, they just regrow twisted and gnarly. So Oracle of Relphi writes, also try Cryptalk, my new custom GPT. All right, Mark Moore writes, this is true witchcraft back to Ireland. They are in Congress with Illuminati and Luciferians. So, yep. Spiderbite writes, I used the Refi earlier. I asked more about Kami. Sirius writes, be respectful to others, practice gratitude. Love is the law. Gray Owl writes, a few years back, I thought I had a witch that had moved into the woods on the Gray Owl property, the Owl's Nest. Yeah, you told me you, like, in that big area of forest behind your property, there was like some rituals that had been conducted there, I think. I don't know if you told me that publicly or privately, but so Gray Owl writes, don't know who or what or who it was. The term witch was introduced by my buddy who first discovered activity of a tango on the property. Gray Owl continues, he said he found a creepy Blair Witch campsite. I first burned the site to the ground. I then implemented a series of kinetic protocols, patrols around the entire perimeter of 100 acres. You live in over 100-acre property? Good Lord, that's awesome. I think I live on like half an acre, but my real estate is extremely expensive. So Gray Owl and crisscrossing throughout also posted signs that any and all tangos would be considered hostile, neutralized on spot. Haven't had any further signs of incursion since. Yeah, but Gray Owl, you live in Canada. Like if you neutralize somebody in Canada, I mean, the Canadian government would not be sympathetic, I'm assuming, even if somebody like attacked you. Spiritual Ascension writes, yet we are not like they portray. We are your mothers, your sisters, your cousins. Spiderbite wrote, it's pretty good. I accidentally refreshed, so I need to get back to it. I screenshot pages, though I'll share later. Fred writes, The Craft, that movie turned a lot of young women to get into witchcraft. Interesting. Spiderbite writes, Randonautica is a smartphone app that generates random coordinates for users to explore, often leading them to unexpected places. Oh boy. So Gray Owl writes, yes, spiritual ascension. I have no beef with witches. Oracle of Relphi says, fantastic. You're such a trendsetter. Thanks for your support. Sirius is writing, love is the law, spiritual ascension. Clown car driver, wow, kind of sounds like what MAGA is doing. Take control of their bodies. Hey, let's avoid kind of political talk here. It's not really super helpful. Other than free speech, and I'm a free speech absolutist. So you're free to talk about politics, but I'm not going to talk about it on this because I think I'm a kind of burn the entire system down kind of guy at this point. I wanted to see this administration basically do that, and they're not. They're just, here's the new boss, same as the old boss. Okay. Okay, so Gray Owl writes, Yepper's got to keep her on a positive tip. I might do things a bit differently nowadays. However, like I said, all I knew was I had a tango running around loose. It's not an X-ray. I think Gray Owl has there's a difference between an X-ray and a tango. An X-ray is a non-human something. I think a tango is probably a trespasser. Yeah, a hostile, yeah. So Gray Owl writes, a hostile target, potentially hostile. Okay. No. So Clown Car Driver writes, Immortality Key, Roman Catholic Church hunted the female medicine women, healers that Jesus trusted to prepare the Kikinian potion as evil. The Roman Catholic Church didn't exist until I think Jesus died. So unless and I think Peter was the first pope, but I'm not sure there was much of a Roman Catholic Church at the time of Jesus at all, unless Peter personally hunted them. Let's see. Dusty's writing Ravenwood. Miss K is writing, what are your thoughts about AU? I don't, excuse my ignorance, but what do you mean by AU? Are you talking? Yeah, just can you elaborate, and I'll try to answer. But let's see. Oh, you mean AI probably. What are your thoughts about surveillance state and YouTube asking for ID for age verification? Also, any thoughts about credit card companies trying to control what consumers? So if I got to be careful what I say because it's being publicly blared out, but I think if we go far along down that path, there will be no reason for free men and women to live. And I think at that point there would be every incentive for people to burn the whole system down. That's what I think. Like they're already debanking. They already started debanking people for speech. Look, Kanye West said some pretty awful things, but it's Kanye West. But he was debanked for that. Like he can't move hundreds of millions of dollars into like J.P. Morgan because he said something. He said mean words. That's unacceptable. Like that's just evil. That is evil. And all it does is confirm what he said. Like they literally, the system acted in exactly the way that he was like for the behavior he was accusing them of. And it's just like you're not helping. You're not helping by doing things like that. So yeah, I violently oppose surveillance state. Now YouTube asking for age verification, there's probably some nuance there, but I think that's probably just a CYA thing for people to protect to avoid them getting sued for children watching content. Yeah, I mean, so the moment my credit card company tries to control what I purchase, the moment I tell them to go fuck themselves and I cancel my credit card. Let's see. But good questions. It got me fired up. I like getting fired up sometimes. Spider Bite Right. I heard an Indian man talking about a man who was over 1,000 years old and still kid if young, or kind of young. Yep. Spiritual ascension slaves that think they are free. So Spider Bite wrote, I verified my age wounds to watch a video. I thought, stuff it. Yeah, Gray Owl writes, agree 100%, Sean. Yeah, Sirius writes, I'm always recorded, used to it, cameras everywhere. Are you live in the UK, Sirius? That sounds like a very UK sort of thing. Spiritual Ascension writes, got those black choppers circling the homestead. And dat, I'm laughing my effing ass off. Gray Owl writes, Google's purchased an HVAC company and has been reported by some who have disassembled it. The in-house thermostat has a microphone. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I hear a bunch of the new TVs have cameras on them too. Okay, so Dusty writes, competing engenders by default vanity, secrecy, coercion, corruption, anxiety, despair, and chance. Participation is guided by these in the competitive ethic, in my estimation. Okay, so not UK, but yep, Prime is bad. So I'm guessing Australia. I'm going to keep guessing. So Miss K writes, do you think this state of technological exertion of control has some basis to be part of NHI control? I always wonder if technology is a trap to control humans. It could be. It could be, beware bearers of gifts, right? We were given these technologies to corrupt us and to weaken us, right? Like AI, some people, use it incorrectly and they're becoming dumber. So, you still got to try to remain sharp. So Solite, US expat saying in South Korea, they have rolled out facial recognition to make payments for your purchases. I read this in one of the Korean English papers. I haven't seen this personally in action yet. Yes, spiritual ascension, time to return to bunker life. Australia. So spiritual ascension said it's been stated that Australia is rabid with NPCs. No, not that I know of. No. So Gray Owl's writing, Sean, you ever dated a witch? If so, please expound. No, I only had 2 serious girlfriends in my life, and I married the second one. So probably not, unless like my wife is secretly a witch, but I doubt it. Spiderbite writes, in China they swipe their palm, foreigners and all. Yeah, China has a social credit system. It's completely diabolic. So Sirius writes, so how does this witchcraft thing work? It's a good question. Teach me, senpai, Sirius writes. Spider Bite, sorry, rabid with NPCs. How so? Who said that? Spiritual Ascension said that. I think. Yeah. Yeah. I'm not trying to start a fight. I'm just relaying facts. Facts of who said what. Okay, so Miss K writes, speaking of surveillance states, Sacramento Utility Company apparently has been providing electric data, detailed usage for their customers to the police without being prompted. Oh my God. Yeah, that's anti-constitutional. Spider Bite saying, I am not an NPC. I don't think she was saying everybody in Australia was an NPC. She just said there's lots of NPCs there. Spider Bite's writing, I am not an animal. Oh, yeah, spiritual ascension, Spider Bite. I never said everyone, and I'm from Australia too. So anyway, there are two people in Australia arguing about Australia and NPCs. So Solite US expat. I'm glad we have like minor disagreements like that, but they're kind of funny in terms of like two people in the same place have different opinions on the same place. Solite US expat writes, did you have any surprises out of any of the new interviews that you recorded? Anything that made you go, oh, ish? Just wondering, any teasers for us? Any exciting new guests you might have on? Yeah, today I just interviewed Justin Bush. I interviewed John Brandenburg. Who else? I'm just going through. Mate, just walk down the street there everywhere. I.e., NPCs in Australia, Spiritual Ascension says. Scott Ian is saying, I think all witchcraft breaks down to methods of tricking your subconscious to affect the physical world, dressed up many different. Yeah, I think there's part of it. I think, as Dean Radin has told me, spells are just as effective as prayers. They're the same sort of thing. So Spiderbite writes, I'm in a small country town. I miss out in the big top circus. Yeah, that's where you're going to find the craziest people in the cities. Better for you, Spider. So future episodes. I have two brothers who were abducted their entire lives. There's like a series of 3. They were rejected from the Good Trouble show. So my first thumbnail is pretty legendary. No, he's not. So Solite US expat Justin Bush, is he related to the Bush family? Our former no, he's an experiencer. He was actually on Cosmic Road today, and I just interviewed him today. Actually, Gray Al recommended him, and it was a great recommendation. I did 2 interviews with him today, and I'm actually scheduled a third because I didn't have to talk at all. He just, kept going. All right, Sirius. She is writing, I have to bounce. Much love to you, for you and family. May you have success and blessing. Thank you, Sirius. Have a great morning, I guess. Solite US expat, they recorded an interview with the Good Trouble show. And then, a few months later, they were all excited about it. And then they got a letter from Matt Ford saying, some anodyne like excuse. And Chris O'Leary, it's Chris and Sean O'Leary. Chris O'Leary was pissed. So, yeah. So he gave me. I mean, if you follow his account on Twitter, he doesn't suffer fools easily. Okay, so Spiritual Ascension saying the guy you had on talking about Wendigos was a real one. A real one, what? Like legit, or like a real skinwalker or Wendigo? Miss K might be out of left field, but have you ever wondered what prompted Anthony Q. Warner to attack AT&T? Also, I never could find his full letters. His story is so strange and no resolution. I don't know anything about Anthony Q. Warner. Tell me more. I don't know anything about that. Yeah, that's ridiculous. That's why I think some of these people who are behind the cover up should be executed. Like they should just have trials like Nuremberg and execute them. That's where I am right now. Like there's no excuse for treating American citizens like that. Thank you, spiritual ascension. Yeah, it was I just let him talk. It was he was mentioning so many different things though. I was trying to keep him focused on one or two because it's too much. Start talking about centaurs and I'm like, that may be real, but let's just focus on stuff that's out there right now and then we can work our way there. Okay. So Miss K is writing Tennessee Boomer 2021. Spider Bites writing, Sean, what do you think about people who have been MK Ultra? I feel sorry for them. Oh, can't say the word on YouTube. All right. Yeah, don't. Spiritual Ascension is saying, I have a lot to say to people who think they are or were a super soldier. Do you realize the programming those memories into you? You looped, I escaped, I escaped. Yeah, I don't believe any of that super soldier nonsense. I just don't. It's well, I mean, like, whatever, 20 and done or whatever that where they go off and fight a war and then I don't believe it. Yeah. What they do is worse. I agree with that. They're doing it to their own like fellow compatriots. It's garbage. All right. I think there's some stuff that's like so. Spiderbite writes, I think that stuff is a mimetic virus. Yeah, some of it is. Oh, that guy. Christmas 2001 in Nashville, Tennessee, used a recording to evacuate, and then his RV, near AT&T. Yeah, I don't know too much about the case, but yeah, I'm sure AT&T. I wouldn't be surprised if AT&T was doing something sketchy because that whole thing was kind of bizarre. So Gray Owl writes, also interesting. The interesting question, like, if we showed you pictures, could you ID the species that took? Yeah, but he was drugged. They drugged him first, which is effed up. But people can watch. I mean, that interview. I'm like, I only need to do one more interview to have all the interviews filled through August and September. I'm trying to get way ahead because there's other stuff that I need to get done before the end of the year. So let's see how we're doing. It looks like we're doing pretty well, but I can't tell without looking. Oh yeah, I got two things from Peter Lavenda. I also interviewed Frater Eleftheria, who's the lifting the lamp guy that Matt Brown like cribbed his, from that screenshot from his site. So yeah, there's like two interviews with him, two interviews with Peter Lavenda. I have I think two more interviews with Lynn Buchanan. So there's a lot of content that I kind of, you know, worked my butt off to try to get ahead of time. So that's good. It's good stuff. Very good stuff. What is going on? That seems terrible. Yeah, YouTube is just not. I don't know what's going on with YouTube. It just doesn't even look right. Like, yeah, there's something wrong with my YouTube views because I'm getting a ton of views on StreamYard, but like virtually nothing on YouTube. It just doesn't make any sense. Interesting. Let me see how we're doing. Yeah, I think for some reason I cannot see views here. Oh, yeah, I'm almost. Yeah, it's bizarre. I can't even begin to understand how YouTube does anything at this point. All right, let me get back to the comments. Okay. Miss K is writing that building is some cover up, CIA record keeping, or something related to gather records on U.S. If that's the case, I'm glad he did what he did. Okay, so Solite US Expat said, Sean, I sent you an email where Daz Smith tasked his group of remote viewers on the Philadelphia experiment, and it looks like the data is true. Why don't you have on again about this? Maybe. We'll see. Real writes, hopefully with Lavenda, Brandenburg, and Bush, etc., the views and likes will trickle in past the algorithm Centurion. Jack's vid with Bush got a few K viewers so far, I think. Yeah, if I did the same, I would probably get 500. That's how screwed up it is. So Miss K wrote AQW wrote so cryptic letters about NHI, reptilians, 5G, and world being very different from what we. Yeah, I think it's certainly very different from what we know. So, well, surprise, surprise, the numbers on YouTube look a little funny, you say, eh? Yeah, they do. Yeah, it just doesn't. Normally, given what I see on my screen right now for StreamYard, this should be at something like, I should have 500 views right now. And I'm not. I'm getting like something extremely low. It just doesn't make any sense at all. Which is a little frustrating. Maybe I just need to refresh it or something. Yeah, it's just a mess. It's actually pretty demotivating. So I don't know where these views are coming from. Oh, really? It was Mary, Queen of Scots, wasn't it? I thought that was Bloody Mary. So Oracle Ralphi is writing Bloody Mary was a different Queen Mary. Oh, a different Queen Mary. I got it. I get it. All right, Spider Bite. Good night. Spider Bite writes, good night, everyone. I must depart tonight. Lots of love to you all. All right. We still have half an hour left. So what do you all want me to talk about while we're still here? So Miss K said he was someone who spent over a year building the RV to have it near AT&T, but made sure everyone knows and evacuate. He sent letters handwritten to close friends with USB sticks. Yeah, that's weird. Oh, yeah. Spiritual. Oh yeah, I didn't even mention that. I have 2 interviews with Jon Stewart talking about exactly that. How about all? And I also I have an interview with John Brandenburg talking about exactly that. You're talking about 3I Atlas. So how about all this talk about a huge interstellar ship flying towards Earth? I mean, it's something. It's definitely weird, whatever it is. Bloody Mary was Queen Mary the First of England. Oh, so not Mary, Queen of Scots. I missed some chat. I don't know. I'm not seeing it. What did I miss? Huh. Yay, bring in the fake invasions, Ian writes. Okay, so Solite US expat, any updates on your frankincense experiments with the owls? Well, last night I did it and I stood up for a moment and there was an owl I think saw me and circled around. Owls look really weird when they fly. If you've ever seen one fly, most people haven't. But they like as they're moving their wings, there's like this blurry. It looks like a blurry distortion. It's just that's the way it looks. I'm not implying anything about it, but there's something creepy about it. But I definitely saw one moving around, and then uh, I woke up this morning hearing an owl hoot. So yeah, I'm seeing more owls, and I'm hearing them more often. So Gray Owl writes, "Yay, Jon Stewart will be good too. He's poking around some Area 51 data that got him hacked. Yeah, he talks all about that." Spiritual Ascension saying it's a Project Bluebeam ploy. They don't give up. Laugh out loud, dingus heads. Miss K writes, I don't believe anything Avi Loeb says anymore. He started to grift so hard to be on the nightly news. Biggest dickuses. Okay. So Spiritual Ascension is writing, the eyes are trying to communicate with you. They are of your avian lineage. Yeah, I like interacting with them. They're very quiet though. Very quiet. And speaking of which, as soon as this ends, I got to go out and do the same thing. So, okay. So Miss K is writing his papers. Assuming Avi Loeb. His papers haven't been peer reviewed about 3I Atlas or other interstellar objects. Man, who knows? Okay, so Spiritual Ascension writes, you have to quiet your mind entirely and speak to them, meaning the owls, through your intuition. Well, we'll see. Spiritual Ascension continues. Start with that. All right. What do folks also want me to talk about? Because I am. It's been a long day. I mean, it's been like. I'm tired. I'm definitely tired. And it's one of those days where you just get the content, but you don't really process it. Like you don't actually really do the work part. You're just collecting it. So I still have a mountain of work after that. So it just never ends. And it's just. Oh wow, Quirk Zone read an email. Miss K writes Quirk Zone. I like the Quirk Zone. Read an email from someone who did CE5 and then got abducted by aliens. Okay, Spiritual Ascension is saying we'll take quite a bit of practice before you hear them respond to you. It will be in your head in your own voice, but it won't be you. Interesting. And keeps being abducted. Oh, I'm just beat. Ah, no, no. Jim got an email from. So Gray Al asks, Jim got abducted, or the person whom wrote the email? The person who wrote the email seemed to be what was conveyed. I don't think Jim Quirk is saying that. Sorry to yawn, but like I said, it's been a day. Ah, smell that U.S. expert. Oops, too bad Dr. Greer doesn't believe aliens abduct people. There should be a disclaimer. Spiritual Ascension is writing, you've come to be one of my favorite channels to watch on YouTube. I look forward to your lives. Thank you, Spiritual Ascension. I appreciate that. Please just spread it, though, because it's just brutal. Like, the level of effort I have to put for like the small, like the return on my investment of time is not high. It's just, it's brutal. So spiritual ascension, don't want to upset anyone, but Greer is a controlled and paid op. Oh, you clearly. I mean, I think he originally was pure of heart, but I think, you know, Miss K is asking, do I believe in any of this stuff? Yeah, like remote viewing's real because I interviewed people in the government who used it to spy on, on the Russians, basically, or used it in spy missions and stuff like that. Like remote viewing is definitely real. Precognition is real because I've demonstrated it, not intentionally, but I would write. If you look at my community tab, I have a few precognitive dreams that are time stamped. I wrote down the dream, and then an event happened. It was basically exactly or very close to exactly what I dreamed. So Miss K is writing NHI, Woo, or other paranormal. Yeah, I think I haven't experienced anything directly. I believe people when they claim to have been abducted and things like that. Like they can't all be grifting, and some may be, but yeah, I believe there are non-human intelligences. I just don't know what they are. I don't know if they're angels, demons, extraterrestrials, ultra terrestrials, uh, interdimensionals. I don't know. There's not enough evidence to determine it. Spiritual. I mean, they could also just be an artifact from a simulation. If we're in a simulation, so spiritual ascension writes, some are before they are utterly corrupted, all in the name of acknowledgement and money. So Oracle of Relphi saying telepathy is real, probably, but I've as far as I know, I've never experienced it. Oh. Okay, so Gray Alright, good point, Sean. Don't know what they are, how many different variants we were dealing with at any given time. Yeah, I mean, it could all be one phenomenon. It's all the same thing, or it could be Buck Rogers' universe where there's everything exists. It's hard to tell. Okay, so Miss K writes, there's someone of Redacted who said that NHI was an MK Ultra like program to brainwash people, practice to reprogram the mind. Yeah, but there are people who have very physical symptoms. So Spiritual Ascension has written, I have acquired an in-depth, in detail tree of the dark side from the very beginning of coming to the Earth realm up until today. Interesting. Oh, yeah, sorry I'm a little off today. I'm just, huh. So Spiritual Ascension, right? They begun as the Pharisees. Let's see. Oof. Not amazing. Oh, excuse me for yawning and all that stuff. I just exceptionally busy day. All right, what we got? Oh, what is NHI? Non-human intelligence. Gray Owl writes the most appropriate answer, in my humble opinion, to the question, do you think these are green men, interdimensionals, ultra X-ray cats, etc., is yes. All. Miss K is writing, people are physically abducted, but their memory is altered, so they think it's NHI, but it's humans, similar to what Greer says. Yeah, but here's the thing. The U.S. military doesn't have the resources to abduct tens of thousands of people. And I speak having been in the US military. We just don't have the numbers to do all that and to keep it quiet. And to what end? Like nothing Greer says makes any logical sense on this point. Like just nothing. And I'm not, you know, that's just my opinion, but it's an informed opinion. Miss K says, but he also says AI will be forced upon us to merge with our brains via. Yeah, I mean, there might be selective pressures that force that. Yeah, in that, Greer is probably right. Right? Because in order to compete, people in order to get jobs, they may have to be forced into accepting that enhancement to survive. Okay, so Gray Owl writes, you need to get a bit of kip, my boy, Shawnee boy, ye Irish lad. Yes, a spiritual ascension, right? Never ever get the mark of the beast, aka Neuralink. Yeah, I want to have nothing to do with it. Spiritual ascension. There are some cases that they absolutely abduct physically, and there are other cases where there's probably astral abductions of some sort. But if just watch the Eric Nansteel interview, like he was absolutely taken physically because they cut his arm off and then reattached it. Like they did some sick, twisted things to him. Yeah, I don't know about the frequency. So spiritual ascension rates, sometimes they do, but more so not. Yeah, I don't know, I can't comment on the frequency. I just can say some of them are definitely physical. So Miss K says this is not what Greer said. I forget his name, but it's similar to Greer's claim. By the way, I think Greer's a grifter, so I don't trust him with anything. Yeah, I think you're right. I never interviewed him, but I haven't reached out to him either because there's one thing he said that I just completely was a complete red flag for me. Um, and that is, he said that the U.S. government offered him $2 billion to keep his mouth shut. If the U.S. government wants you to keep your mouth shut, they're not going to pay you $2 billion. They're going to pay a crack addict $5,000 to take a stolen pistol with the serial number etched off of it and just take you out in random street violence where none's the wiser. If you think you're worth $2 billion, if your silence is worth $2 billion, there are much cheaper ways to use U.S. tax dollars to keep you quiet. So Solite US expat, yeah, I've heard and read about that. The guy that was interviewed by Danny Jones, who runs the Museo Tarot on YouTube and TikTok, said that's Greer's Mossad and not even a real doctor. I don't want to. That's like conspiracy theory territory. It could be true, could be not. Spiritual Ascension is saying, so good to see many exercising their discernment within the spiritual community. I'm proud of you all. Yeah, it's hard to do. It's definitely hard to do. Oh man. Gray owl, ego over inflation is a real phenomenon within the field. Yes, 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 it is. Maybe I need to be better, get better at that. Maybe I need to inflate my ego a little bit. You know, I mean, I could just say facts, and I would sound like an arrogant prick, right? So, but I just try not to. I have 2 degrees from Stanford, and I have 2 degrees, 2 graduate degrees from Harvard, right? I'd never say that, but that's that's a fact. That's a fact. But I don't say that stuff because it's just off-putting, you know. So I bet you some of you didn't even know that. Like that's a testament to you know. Anyway, yeah, I bet you Miss K didn't know that. She probably didn't know that because it's not relevant. It's just not. So Gray House like, nah, keep a check on the ego, Brodsky, else we might mistake you for an X-ray airship. Yeah. Thank you, Spiritual Ascension, because you're a real one. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just off-putting. I don't like when people people have kind of done that shit to me, and I just keep my mouth shut. Like, I'm not, this is not a dick measuring contest. It's just not. It's just trying to understand what's going on in the world and trying to get to a better understanding of the fundamental nature of reality. And that's it. And, truth is important. So Miss K is writing, I heard you say in another interview, but I appreciate that you don't shove it in people's faces. Yeah, because it's off putting. So, yeah. So spiritual ascension is like we know our worth. We need not seek external validation. It would be a little nice to get, more subscribers and more money. That's all, just so I can focus more on this. But I can't focus 100% of my time on this because I have to make a living. That's my quandary. So Gray Owl's like you keeping it real whilst mixing a Moloko Plus within and through a cocktail glass darkly. Indeed. Yeah, so spiritual ascension. I like Wu Sean way better than Harvard Sean. Yeah, me too. Fred is writing, have you tried doing a collab? Yeah, I've done them a few times with Jack Connor at Cosmic Road. Um, I run finance for a startup. That's all I'm going to say. Um, it is. I make 300 times what I make on YouTube working in that job on an annual basis, or more than 300 times. Sorry, almost 400 times. That's the fundamental issue, right? So, like my YouTube channel would have to 400x for me to make the same money. So that's why it seems like such a far cry. Although I think as you grow in YouTube, the money is not linear. It actually, the bigger you are, the more of a multiple you get on your money, right? So I'm just making this up, but if you make $1, I don't know, like if you make $10 for every 1,000 views at my current size, if you have 500,000 subscribers, you probably make $25 or $30 per 1,000 views. So you don't only grow with scale, you also grow, you know, you not only have 10x the views, you have it's like times 3x the money you make per view. Yeah, please, because I would love to do this full time. I know. I mean, I did for a while. I mean, I was doing many other things, but I took about 2.5 years off from corporate to try to start my own thing. And I made most of my money from working at a local university, but also building financial models for startups. And YouTube, you know, the first year and a half, I didn't make much of any, or the first year, I didn't make anything from YouTube. Yeah, I've done live streams with with Jack on our Cosmic Road. So what else? What else do people? More people are tuning in. It's crazy, but I don't know where they're coming from because they're not coming from my YouTube channel. That's for sure. Let me see. I'm just curious to see where it is right now. Yeah, it's just not. This is a below average for YouTube for me. It's like below average trending right now. Although for StreamYard, it looks like it's doing amazing. Yes, corporate life is soul sucking. It is. It was actually. It was like once you're away from it for a while, it's even more difficult to come back because you forget. Like you got like I got a taste of freedom, and then now, granted, I didn't have to go back. I still had plenty of cash left, but it kind of just fell into my lap. So I'm like, well, I can soldier through this for as long as I can handle it. But the problem is the YouTube channel is not like it's growing in subscribers, but it's not growing in views. I mean, the total number of views is growing, but like I think I had said earlier, I used to be at 40 to 60,000 or 50 to 60,000 views a month. Now I'm at 30 to 40,000 because YouTube changed some algorithm or something like that. So it's been really discouraging this year. Miss K saying I have so many more viewers via C5. I don't mean I'm not trying to complain. It's just it's hard. Solite US expat is saying, huh? For for what? Oops. All right, spiritual ascension is saying, for the Most High did not create the devil, instead he created Lucifer in all its glory and beauty, who wouldn't obey, and so he was cast out. He fell, and the sins of man manifested him into Satan. Okay. All right, guys, we have 6 minutes. So anything else? Have you heard of the mind lamps? No, Fred. Say more. Have I heard of the mind lamps? No, but I need to hear about it. Say more. What the heck is that? So Solite US Expat is saying, yeah, I'm saying because your numbers went down while your subscribers have been going up. Yeah, but they're also not at, right now I'm only breaking 300 subscribers at best a month. And that's like that growth is super slow. So spiritual ascension is writing the most high is love, pure, unconditional, untainted, glorious love. Yeah, Solite US Expat, when I do my next monthly live stream for August, I'll go through some of my stats so that people can see. So Miss K is saying, I think good and evil is battle between people and their rulers. Never obey. Yep. Let's see. All right, so Fred is writing Mind Lamp from Global Consciousness Project. Mathematician uses, random number generators that change with our thoughts. Mind Lamp changes colors based in those, so based on what people think. Yeah, I think they use it to predict like major, when they all are correlated, there's usually something like 9/11 happens. Do I have some closing thoughts? Well, based on what we presented tonight, there's more of an acceptance of Wicca and similar witchcraft related practices. Although I thought it should have been a little bit more balanced. I don't think witchcraft or Wicca is an overwhelmingly positive thing. I think it depends on the people that use it. So I think there are people who probably use it to negative ends as well. And I don't think AI really picked up that part. I also thought AI was a little progressively biased, let's say, but not too kind of in that direction, but was definitely to the right of center, to the left of center a little bit, but not annoyingly so, but definitely could detect that. And that's about it. Okay, so Solite US Expat is writing, people, please share Sean's shows if you enjoy them with as many people as you can. Sean's channel deserves to grow much faster. Share, like, and subscribe. I appreciate that, Solite US Expat. Yeah, it's becoming a grind. It's been 3.5 years, and it's like I'm hitting a wall. To be fair, I haven't been changing much of anything because I don't have the time. I'm just running flat out it's like the Red Queen hypothesis. I'm running flat out just to stay in place. So all I can do is just try to get ahead as much as possible and then, make it through. Okay, so Spiritual Ascension is writing, I have a closing thought for y'all. The godlet of the holy books is not the Most High. He is in fact a demonic entity. Oh, that sounds like Gnosticism or a version of Gnosticism, but who knows? Oh, you bring that. Miss K writes, oh, I lived with a witch for 2 months. Miss K, that's highly relevant, and we have a minute left. I'm throwing a penalty flag on you. You should have brought that up 5 minutes or 10 minutes ago so we could have talked about it, but that's fine. That's fine. So Solite US Expat, I think you should start using hashtags in the YouTube video descriptions. I could. I've tried it before, and I didn't really know if it really worked. So Miss K wrote, well, pagan, but that was something. A yellow card. Gray Owl writes, closing thought. Do you know what's going to I don't know what's going to happen, man, but get your kicks before the whole shithouse goes up in flames. Jim Morrison. Okay, so Fred, Miss K, that's the cliffhanger for the next episode. All right, everyone. Good night. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Have a great week, and God bless.
you.